I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today is Saturday, and for today's video, I finished up a little piece of furniture that I've been working on. I absolutely adore how it came out, you guys. I can hardly wait to show it to you. And without further ado, let's get to today's video. This is the little cabinet that I've been working on for today's video. It's a little Martha Washington sewing cabinet. I got this out of my friend Kathy's garage. When I looked it up online to find ideas on what to do with it, I found that there were quite a few of these out there, most of them in varying shades of brown. I decided I really wanted to do something fun with this, so that is what I'm going to do. And before I got started painting, I did give this a really thorough cleaning with some crud cutter. I ended up going over it twice and then using some water to just rinse off any crud cutter residue. I also removed the little knobs from the front of this, and then I began painting. Now, I'd already chosen a decoupage paper to go on the sides of the little cabinet, and this color coordinates beautifully with it, and this is called Skeleton Key. It's one of the DIY paint colors. So I went ahead and got started with one good coat of Skeleton Key everywhere that I wasn't going to be putting decoupage paper. Now, before I start a project, I always like to look around for inspiration. So I did a Pinterest search for painted Martha Washington cabinets, and I did find a few that I really liked. And in most of them, they had replaced the double cabinet knobs in the front with a single knob on each of the drawers, which I thought looked a little better. It was a little less busy to me. So I decided to do the same. So I'm mixing up some Durham water putty, and I am going to fill the holes on my drawers. So I started by putting a piece of painter's tape over the front of the holes, and then on the back side I went ahead and filled in with the Durham water putty. So I'm just pushing that into the holes with my finger, making sure that it's nice and full, and then just kind of smoothing out the top and then setting them aside to dry. While they were drying, I took another look at my paint job that I'd done and realized that I did have some bleed through on this cabinet. So I went ahead and grabbed my shellac and gave the entire cabinet a really good coat of shellac to try and prevent any further bleed through. While I waited for the shellac to dry, I went back to the drawers and I grabbed my little orbital sander and sanded the backs where the water putty was nice and smooth. I also removed the painter's tape from the front of the drawers and gave them a good sand as well. Some of the painter's tape, or some of the water putty, had pushed the painter's tape up just a little bit, and so there were a couple places where it was kind of mounded on the surface of the drawer, and of course I wanted that smoothed out. Once I was done with that, I wiped them nice and clean, and I went over them with a coat of shellac as well, just again to prevent any bleed through. Then it was on to my second coat of paint, which thankfully I had much better luck with. Having that shellac underneath it, I really didn't see any bleed through after that. Now, if you've been following me a while, you know I'm not a huge fan of brushstroke marks, and so I grabbed my little hand sander. This has some really old 220 grit sandpaper in it, so it's not very rough, but I like to use it to just smooth out the brushstrokes. Once I was done with that, I grabbed my orbital sander again and I just went around the edges and did a little bit of light distressing. Now I only use the orbital sander on flat surfaces just because for me, on places that are spindly like the legs, it just takes off way too much at a time. So for those, I grabbed some 120 grit sandpaper and I did a little bit of hand sanding just on the legs to again do just a little bit of light distressing and bring back some of that beautiful brown color from underneath the paint. Once I was finished with the sanding, I went ahead and grabbed a damp shop towel and wiped the entire piece down, both inside and outside, so that I didn't have any of that sanding dust left on it. Once I had the cabinet nice and clean again, it was time to paint where I wanted the decoupage paper to go. Now I like using a light color under my decoupage paper so that my images really stand out nicely. And in this case, since I had such a large area to cover, I used white linen by DIY, which is one of their cottage colors, and it has a built-in sealer. And the advantage to the built-in sealer is that when you're working with your decoupage medium, you don't have to worry about it reactivating your paint. I've had that happen where my paint has accidentally been reactivated by my medium and ended up leaching into my paper. So for my paper, I'm using this beautiful one by Redesign with Prima. This one was curated by Annie Sloan and it's called Swedish Posy. It's fabulous. I just love it. So the first step when you're using any of the fibrous Redesign papers is to make sure you either iron or steam out the wrinkles. They are usually pretty heavily wrinkled, but a little bit of steam goes a long way. Then it was on to the actual decoupage process, which was a little bit time consuming and a little bit scary, honestly. Now, unfortunately, the paper wasn't quite long enough by like a quarter of an inch to cover the sides completely, but I went ahead and went with it anyway. I just figured I would paint that in and no one would be able to tell the difference. So I started on the one side and I just went ahead and coated this entire side with a good coat of DIY's liquid patina. Then I placed my paper very carefully over the liquid patina. I left the gap so that there's even amounts of gap on the top and the bottom. And then I just worked my way around this piece and I covered this entire front side with another coat of liquid patina, wrapped the paper around, used my hands to make sure that it was pressed firmly down into that medium. And then I did the last section in the back. Now the paper was too long, so I went ahead and just creased it really well with my fingernails and my fingers in that one corner and just made sure that my paper was laid down very well and completely attached to my piece. Once that was done, it was time to go over the entire thing with another coat of liquid patina. And for these thicker fibrous papers by Redesign, I like to put quite a thick coat of that liquid patina over the top. So I'm just putting a very generous coat of that clear patina over the top of this paper. Then I used the same procedure on the other side of the little cabinet and attached the decoupage paper there as well. Once I had both of the sides decoupaged, it was time to cover up that little strip on the top and bottom of each side. So I just took a little bitty paintbrush and very carefully painted 2 coats of the skeleton key along the top and the bottom. This didn't take too terribly long, thankfully, and once it was done, you really couldn't even tell that there were gaps there to begin with. The last step for the decoupaging process was just to cut off the excess paper with my nice sharp box cutter. So I just very carefully went along that line in the back and removed that excess piece of paper. Now I knew I wanted to do something fun with the fronts of the drawers as well, so I grabbed out this stencil by Redesign with Prima. This one was curated by Cottage and it's called Renata. It's one of my favorites. And some golden ticket liquid patina by DIY and a makeup sponge by the Dollar Tree. And I just began pouncing some of that golden ticket over the stencil to add a little bit of bling to the front of these drawers. Now, when you're using a liquid like golden ticket to do stenciling, you really want to start with a very light coat and go over it very gently in the beginning and then just kind of work up from there. So I start really light and I just work around in sections, adding a little bit more as I go until I have the look that I'm going for. Then to add just a little bit more depth and dimension to the fronts of the drawers, I decided to add some appliques. For the 2 smaller drawers, I'm going to be using the Soho Haugen mold, and I am just creating the same casting twice using amazing casting resin. For the larger drawer, I chose to go with one of the new Decor polys called Luxe Ornamenta. I thought it was a perfect fit for that large drawer. Then I went ahead and painted all of my little appliques with 1 coat of Skeleton Key by DIY so that they would match the color of the cabinet. And the part that I completely forgot to record was me measuring out where the center of each drawer was and drilling the holes for the knobs that were going to be going on these, and also drilling the hole in the center of this Decor poly so that there was room for the screw to go through. I also glued these on to the front of each of the drawers with Titebond Quick and Thick. I just brushed a very, very thin coat all over the backs and placed them over the holes where I had drilled. Once they were dry, it was finally time to seal my skeleton key paint. And to start, I am using a coat of DIY's clear wax. And I am simply applying that all over this entire piece with my soft bristle brush and then using a dry shop towel to very gently wipe back any excess wax. I like going over the decoupage paper as well with a coat of wax. I think it helps lay the fibers down a little bit, and it also makes it a little softer and smoother to the touch, which I like. Once I was finished with the clear wax, it was time to add a little bit of shadowing, and I am going to be doing that with some DIY dark wax. I started with the details on the front of the drawers, adding in that wax with a small brush and then very carefully going around the edges to wipe back any excess wax. I just wanted this to have a shadowed effect. I really didn't want the entire piece to be covered in dark wax. Once I was finished with that process on this applique, I went ahead and grabbed a chip brush and just dry brushed a little bit more of the skeleton key paint back over the top of this applique, just to bring back some of that skeleton key color from underneath that dark wax. Once I was finished with the dark wax on the appliques, I went around the entire piece and added just a little bit of dark wax in the corners and under some of the edges. This I'm honestly almost dry brushing on. I would dip my brush into the dark wax and then wipe almost all of that wax back off onto a shop towel, just because again, I didn't want the entire thing to start looking muddy. I just wanted to add a little bit more depth to some of the details in this piece. So again, just going along the cracks and crannies and crevices of this piece with a little bit of that dark wax, and then kind of dry brushing it out just over the corners and along the edges. Once I was happy with my dark wax, I went ahead and grabbed out my Eternal Colored Decor Wax by Redesign with Prima, and using my fingertip, just added a touch of that to the front of the appliques on my drawers. Now, the final step was hardware, and unfortunately, I didn't have anything in my stash that I really liked for this piece, so I ended up making a special trip to Hobby Lobby last night just to buy knobs for this cabinet. I absolutely love the end result, and I hope you guys love it as much as I do. From here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my little cabinet makeover, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, I would really love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit that little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of today's makeover. Also, just a quick reminder, I do carry the paint and products you saw me use today, and those can be purchased on my website at www.vecology.com. eclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry DIY paint and products, which I just learned recently that there are 5 new colors coming, you guys. So stay tuned for those. I can hardly wait to show them to you. I got to see them this morning. I also carry Roycycle Decoupage papers, Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, as well as Redesign with Prima. And I have new stuff to show you there as well. And I can hardly wait to show that to you. So stay tuned. Those will be coming soon in a video near you. So anyway, let's see, for Wednesday's video, I really don't know what that's going to look like at this point. I spent so much time trying to get this cabinet together, and I know this video is going to end up being a little bit late because it took me a while to edit, but I'm hoping to get, if not a couple thrift flips done, possibly a junk run for Wednesday, so we'll see. Anyway, I hope you guys will join me back here for that on Wednesday, and until then, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend and beginning of the week, and I want to say thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.